Hello everyone, I'm Sam Norris, a current freshman at Trinity College. Today I want to talk to you guys about a topic I'm sure almost everyone has heard of, fantasy football. In this episode, I'll provide a brief overview of the inner workings of fantasy football for anyone unfamiliar with the game. Then I'll analyze the online discourse community, the hashtag fantasy football on X. During this exploration of the online space, I will explore how the community builds around shared goals, such as improving managerial skills, avoiding those dreaded last place punishments, or winning prize money. I'll discuss the unique dynamics of communication, which includes everything from detailed advice posts and analysis videos to memes and humorous content. Finally, I will have a guest on, a fantasy football player who is a close friend of mine. He will have specifically insightful firsthand experience with one of those terrible last place punishments. During our conversation, I will ask my guest about his personal reasons for playing fantasy football. Stay tuned as we explore how fantasy football members interact online, but also get firsthand insight to why fantasy football is so popular and why it is a game that resonates with so many people throughout the country. Before I go any further with this podcast, I want to give a brief overview and explanation of fantasy football so that any listeners who may be unfamiliar with its complexities and nuances can have a better grasp on the following segments. A group of people, usually coworkers, family, or buddies, form a league. This league typically consists of about 8 to 12 different players or teams. Everyone drafts real-life NFL players to create their own team. But there's a twist. These players aren't on the same team in real life, so you get to mix and match stars from all over the league. Think of it as being your own general manager. You get to draft a quarterback, running backs, wide receivers, a tight end, a defense, and even a kicker. And every week your team competes against another team in your league. The point value each player on your team earns is based on their performance in real life. So let's say you draft Derrick Henry, and he goes off for 150 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. His performance will earn you a specific point value. But it's not just about picking big-name players or the best players at their position. Strategy is vital to success in fantasy football. As a manager, you have to consider a number of factors. Is your running back playing against a top-tier defense this week? Is there a wide receiver on your bench going up against a bad defense? The decisions to start and bench players is where fantasy football games are won and lost. And don't forget about injuries. Anyone who watches football knows it's a brutal physical sport where players get hurt all the time. Injuries are the heartbreak of fantasy football. 1 minute you've got the best running back in the league, and the next week they're out for the season and your team is in shambles. This is where the waiver wire comes into play. Think of it like free agency, but for fantasy. Every week you can add undrafted players to replace your underperforming or injured ones. But you have to be quick. If there's a good player on waiver wires, everyone else in your league is going to try to pick up that same player. The goal is to win your league's championship. Some leagues have prize money, last place punishments, and others are just for bragging rights. But bragging rights are priceless, especially amongst a group of friends or co-workers. And it's not just about fantasy football. Fantasy leagues are social. It's about trash talking, trading players, and staying connected with your group all season long. Now that you understand fantasy football, we can explore a primary source of discourse amongst fantasy football players across the country, the hashtag fantasy football on X. Let's dive into one of the most fascinating online communities out there, the hashtag fantasy football on X. It's a digital discourse community built around shared goals and a love for the game. The hashtag provides fantasy football players around the world with a connection to thousands of like-minded enthusiasts. This community consists of advice, humor, and in some cases, desperation to avoid those dreaded last-place punishments. Many leagues have hilarious or brutal punishments for finishing last. One punishment I saw tweeted on the hashtag was for the last-place team in a fantasy league to spend 24 hours in a Waffle House, where every waffle they ate took off 1 hour from the 24 total hours. In one league I played with my friends in high school, the loser had to finish a gallon of milk while simultaneously running a mile naked. But it's not all memes and punishment stories. The community is full of knowledgeable accounts who profit off posting fantasy football advice. Various posts offer lineup advice, waiver wire tips, and even detailed analysis videos. Some creators use the hashtag to share predictions or in-depth articles and podcasts. It's a unique blend of entertainment and education. What's really unique is the wide variety of communication. You have people who post spreadsheets and advanced stats, while at the same time meme makers poke fun at NFL players or teams when they play really bad. This mix keeps the hashtag lively and approachable. Whether you're a serious fantasy player or someone who plays for fun, there's something for you on the hashtag. Another interesting layer of this community is credibility. In this community, trust is everything. People determine an account's reliability on their follower count, credentials, or how often their predictions hit. It's a feedback loop. If you post great advice, you'll gain followers and become a trusted voice in the community. Ultimately, the hashtag is a space where people come together to learn, share, and bond over a common passion, and that's what makes it so special.
JP, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners?
What's up, everybody? I'm JP Kerrigan. I'm first year at McAllister College, friend of Sam's from high school and childhood.
All right, can you explain to our audience who was in your league? Was it friends, classmates, and then just like the parameters of your league, like what types of punishments or rewards you guys had?
Yeah. So my friends and I from high school have a league. It's just some of my classmates. And we started it just as a little fun tradition to connect over football. And it's kept going.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you recently, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, got last place in your fantasy football league.
Yes, that's right, Samuel. The year I lost, the reward for winning was $200 because everyone puts in money to the pot. And the punishment was the cage, which is where you get put into a dog cage and have your fellow league mates throw different potions and creations on you for about 15 minutes.
Could you explain to our audience in a little bit more detail what it was like being in that cage and seeing your friends throw what you called potions onto you?
Sure, I'd love to expound on that. It was one of the most horrifying experiences of my life. I was sitting there in a Speedo and swim goggles. It was pretty cold, probably about 40 degrees. And when I looked out of the cage and saw the smile on my friends' faces, I just knew I was in for a terrible stretch of 15 minutes. They started blending things together. I think there was some chicken bones ground up with Wingstop expired ranch. Lots of flour was thrown in there, and all around just some horrifying things.
Clearly, that sounds like a pretty terrible punishment. Now, I have one final question for you, and it is, what keeps you playing fantasy football? I mean, even after experiencing a terrible punishment like that, what keeps you coming back to the game?
I mean, I would say the money, but it's never been about the money for me. I think there's always a knowledge for me that I'm not going to win the league. So it's an opportunity to stay connected to my friends. And it's always fun just when you see that matchup for the next week, just shooting your friend a little message, chirping them, talking some trash for the next week. And yeah, I think it's a great way to stay connected with your friends, especially in college.
Thanks for joining us, JP. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
That wraps up this episode of Fantasy Football Unveiled. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the strategies, stories, and humor that make fantasy football such a beloved game. I hope you enjoyed learning more about the online community and hearing firsthand experiences from my guest. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.